13, they say, is unlucky for some, but not for us. Well, fingers crossed for the next year anyway. Welcome to our 13th anniversary special. We're at the BIC and we're going to test 50 of the newest cars and bikes to find out which ones are the best of 2019. So let's rock and roll. So while all of that looks like a lot of fun and games, we in fact have a very scientific way of going about judging these cars and bikes. So we have our score sheets that rate a car on quality, comfort, refinement, drivetrain, ride and handling, and something called X factor, which is a little bit extra which a car or bike brings that makes it special. So we put all of this together to bring you the most transparent scores possible. The question we get asked all the time is why we conduct this test year after year at the BIC. After all, we're not necessarily here to find out which is the most track-focused car and bike. Well, other than the two performance awards, of course. We love pounding around this racetrack in the best cars and bikes of the year, but that's not necessarily why we come back to the BIC year after year. You see, it provides a controlled environment in which to truly test each of these cars and bikes. After all, if it performs well here at the limit, you can be sure that it'll perform on the road as well. Of course, from a performance standpoint, a lap time demonstrates everything from acceleration to braking to road holding to handling. If a car does well here at the limit, then you know that it's going to do well when you're driving it on the road as well.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
You know, like with any other intense competition, we also get a lot of questions about our awards. How impartial are we? How do we judge these cars? How can we take cars from that cost 5 lakh rupees to something that costs over 3 crore rupees and set them on a set of parameters that makes it equal? But I think the secret there lies in this R scoring sheet. You see, judging a car is built up a combination of many factors. And in our judging, I think we've done the best job of breaking down those factors and making every single factor important. We start with the quality, that's very important. We start with how much comfort or space the car has, because the practicality for most Indian users is still a very big thing. Of course, there's refinement, so it shows what the engineering is like. And there's design, that can be a really polarizing aspect. Then there is engine, the drivetrain, the gearbox, how everything works, how efficient it is. Then there's the ride and handling. On our broken roads, ride and handling can make a huge difference to a vehicle. So I think that's an important factor. Practicality, of course, a lot of Indians still use a single car family. So the practicality on highways, in small trips, in daily urban trips, that's a big factor. One big thing of autoX, of course, is the X factor. How exciting is a car? How desirable is it? Why do I want it? So X factor in our scoring gets a lot of points. In fact, out of 100, 20% of points are out of the X factor and 15% of the times are of the lap time. Because ultimately we think that if you compare every car on a neutral platform, which is this BIC, this lovely racetrack, you can point out the flaws and the good work that the engineers have done in a single car. And the last factor, and the one which has the maximum weightage, is value for money. That's 30%. Because end of the day, India is a tough market because every single customer is looking for more value for money.
So two cars that were the biggest surprise for me on the racetrack. One is the Hyundai Grand i10 Nios and the second is the Honda Civic. They were both really sorted at the limit when you push them on the racetrack. And they're two cars that you wouldn't necessarily expect to excel out on the BIC. Well, the Honda Civic, yes, to a certain extent, because I've driven the Honda Civic Type R, which is a fantastic hot hatchback. And actually, All Hondas, when you push them, they just feel inherently good. And the Honda Civic feels absolutely fantastic. It's low, the front end is sharp. It feels really, really responsive when you push it to the limit. The other car that I was kind of surprised about when you really start pushing it is the Tata Harrier. I've driven this car on the road and I found the steering weight to be a little bit odd, and it felt about 90% there, with the balance 10% just not quite feeling right and refined as some Tatas tend to do. In this case, however, when you push it and you really, really give it the beans on a racetrack, you get the inherent goodness that comes from the Land Rover chassis underneath. Especially when you compare it to its competition in the segment, the likes of the MG Hector, which actually feels really, really wayward when you push it. I mean, the steering weighs up and becomes really heavy, but it feels like it's not connected to the front wheels, and you're attempting to go in this direction and you're actually ending up going in that direction. So compared to the MG Hector especially, this thing felt really sorted when you pushed it. I just wish they would calibrate the steering a little bit better. In this segment, from the point of view of which felt the most balanced, it's got to be the Kia Seltos. As for which cars just feel absolutely right on the racetrack, it's got to be the BMWs. Both the 3 Series and the X5 felt really, really good on the racetrack. Although I have to say that Mercedes has really turned the corner from a performance standpoint, and both the C-Class and the CLS felt really, really good when you pushed it. And of course, at the upper end of the spectrum, you've got the Porsche Macan, which feels like the perfect sports car for Indian roads. It's got the ground clearance, it's got the practicality, it's got the space, and it doesn't have any of the compromises of a sports car. Of course, it's carrying around the weight of an SUV, but no company masks that weight better than Porsche. As far as at the absolute upper end of the spectrum, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo was an absolute treat to push on the BIC. The BIC is the big, wide, huge F1 spec racetrack, and you need a car with the extreme performance of a Lamborghini Huracan to really test out both the machine and the track. I just wish every single car could feel like the Huracan on the racetrack.
Now, the BMW 3 Series has always been known as the ultimate sports sedan. And you know what? This new 7th generation model lives up to that tag, because out on the track, this chassis is just so beautifully balanced. And you know what? When you put it in sport mode out on the track, it feels phenomenal. Throttle response is razor sharp. Even when you lift off, the powertrain holds the right gear in the right rev. So the moment you tap the throttle, there's that immediate sense of urgency to power delivery. So it's a lot of fun to drive this car out on the track. The steering is great too. And overall, I think the 3 Series is just a phenomenal car. The petrol model is what we always needed, and the 330i model does not disappoint.
So there you have it, folks. We had an absolute blast at the BIC with all of the contenders as they battled it out for a top spot in the top 5, and of course for the coveted Performance Car of the Year crown. Stay tuned for our 13th anniversary as we unveil our best of 2019.